a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's the 5th of June, Monday, and we have a retrospect over the 4th of July celebrations over this last weekend. 250 years, what is the likelihood that this empire will continue? We're going to take a look at what people who have studied this in the past say. 250 years is about the average. Of course, there's been some that have been significantly longer, others that have been shorter. Nevertheless, it is a time of the fourth turning as well. What will we be seeing happening at this point in time? And we're going to take a look at corruption. As many people warned at the beginning, a democracy only lasts as long as people until they discover that they can vote themselves largesse out of the treasury. It appears that our politicians have discovered that. That's right, we now have a kleptocracy, or you might say a caucusocracy, the rule by the least qualified and most corrupt people that we have. We're going to take a look at that. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And of course, the information just keeps building about these alternative treatments, these antiparasitics, these dewormers that are being, we have a lot of testimonials about how effective they were against cancer. Interesting, one of these cases was someone who could not get any conventional cancer treatment because they stopped all that because of the COVID pandemic. While we had the nurses doing TikTok videos, they wouldn't treat any cancer patients. And so we started taking ivermectin and didn't know it was going to help with the cancer. And all of a sudden, they discovered that it worked very well for the cancer. So there are a lot of cases of this, remarkable cases of this. But let's take a look at the cancer that affects our society, and that is our government. We had in Washington, D.C. over the weekend, we had a military aircraft roaring through the D.C. skies for hours. And again, I think that kind of a party is a metaphor for what America is today. Hyper-militaristic, and of course, Trump wanted to have a massive military parade, Soviet style, for his birthday a year or two ago. And organizers called it the most ambitious aviation spectacle in American history. Yeah, really, as we look at this, it's kind of interesting, I think, that as the celebration in Washington kind of went awry because of weather and other issues, you had, and in many other places, you saw very nice displays. For instance, the Sunshine Skyway down in Tampa, where I grew up. Take a look at this. This is, they lit that up in red and blue. It looks beautiful, reflected off the water. And of course, the Sunshine Skyway is a huge bridge, goes up really high. They had a massive accident a few years ago when a barge took out one section of it. A lot of people went over, several died, but a beautiful display there. That was didn't have anything to do with Washington. Then there was another.
July of 1896, exactly 100.
Let's see, we got the wrong clip there. Do we not have the drone show in Texas?
I'll get it.
Yeah. Interesting drone show in Texas, and except that in Washington, where you have the Caesar wannabe, it's all about the military and about other issues. Here we are. Yeah, you can just go ahead and play that and pull the music down a little bit. That's a 3D drone display of George Washington. There's a giant eagle with fireworks underneath it. And look, the bottom of the eagle's wings have had fire coming out of it. It's pretty amazing what they're doing with these drones now. So in Washington, you have this massive Soviet-style parade of military hardware, hours of flyovers. Don't worry about the cost. We have to have the biggest spectacle, the most expensive. Everything's going to be the biggest. Everything's going to be the tallest. Everything's going to be the largest. Always excess, never finesse, right? Biggest, tallest, longest, and most expensive. That's the way that we want to do it, right? So as the New York Times headlined it, storms, sweat, and fire. Because I guess we stopped the bloodshedding for a short period of time, Trump talked about that. He says, yeah, we're going to give Iran a break for a couple of days. So if you think America is about Washington, I've got a bridge to sell you, and you can get the Brooklyn Bridge probably now a little bit cheaper because it caught fire. We have fails in New York City and fails with the New York City Democrat that is our president. It was kind of interesting to see what happened with the event in Washington. Let me see if I can find that clip. Do we have the clip of the concert that was there, the Potemkin concert? Because that's really what this all worked out to. We have, well, we'll go ahead and stop that right now. We have, here it is right here. Look at this. This is a big celebration. They got a large, big band there, and only a couple people standing in front of it. And this person who's filming it does a long pan around the area here so you can see there's absolutely nobody else there. Because it became about a person, not about any principles. Isn't that a reflection of the Trump administration as well? So you had lightning and record-breaking heat, and because of the lightning, they forced everybody to evacuate. I don't know if that's why this is so empty, but they forced everybody to evacuate. Interesting where they went to take shelter. They went to the headquarters of the IRS. And to McDonald's, of course. Now that's a perfect metaphor for Trump as well. Taxes and junk food, right? The evacuation order was lifted after 2 hours, which meant that everybody had to go back through security again because this is Washington, and this is the kind of thing you always see happening there. Don't forget, we have the most fearful government ever. That is really what this has turned into, fearful and paranoid. And so one person said, well, think about 1976 versus 2026, a tale of two birthdays. And yes, there were some things that were very majestic as well as, not just excessive. America threw a birthday party back in 1976, 50 years ago, had the bicentennial. And the one they talk about in this article from the New American was from American Thinker, their essay. And the person who wrote this said, it was amazing. There was in New York where this person was a child, 10 years old. So they had the largest flag that was ever made. Again, got to go with excess. And what happened was it was shredded by the wind in 90 minutes. But it was a huge flag that it went from the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, went way across the harbor from Staten Island to Brooklyn in one long shot. And it was so long that the wind tore it up. But they said it was an epic sight. And I remember seeing that as well. They called it Operation Sail. It was a parade of tall ships, sailing ships, in the New York harbor. And they said that this person who wrote this said 10 years old, and parents took a picture of what this looked like and had that photograph on display in their home for the rest of their lives. She said it was quite a reminder that what endures most isn't perfection, but something that's bold enough to try, just like the American Republic that it represented. Well, as they point out in this piece from the New American, when you look at what America was like in 1976, it was far from perfect. We were still suffering from Nixon's 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, his wage and price controls that had been put in. We had seen corruption from Spiro Agnew, his vice president, who had been caught with suitcases full of cash that he was taking in the White House. He also pushed through the Endangered Species Act, the EPA, OSHA, many other things. Nixon was a person that nobody liked personally, and he also paved the way with all these policies. He was already becoming very statist, but his personal dislike with his secret war, the secret bombing in Vietnam, and all the other issues that were there. Of course, Watergate, I think, was a really small part of it. Watergate didn't matter at all to me. Things like the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit and the idea that Washington could set the speed limits for you. And again, how'd they do that? Well, we're going to withhold highway funds if you don't. It's always the money, bribery and blackmail. And so when I looked at that, everybody was disgusted. And back in 1976 with Richard Nixon that I knew, I certainly was. So what did we get from that? We got Jimmy Carter, apparently the opposite of Nixon, really nice guy. And yet, look what Carter brought through. As Gerald Celente has pointed out so many times, deregulation of banks and all these other things that were brought in. His number two guy who really ran the White House for him, Zbigniew Brzezinski, was putting together the Trilateral Commission. And he was one who came up with his book, Between Two Ages. He talked about the coming technocratic age. So he was pushing the technocracy. He was pushing an approach to global governance. In his Trilateral Commission, we're going to have basically 3 different consolidated markets, which will lead to 3 consolidated governments, Europe, Asia, and then North America. Then we'll tie them all together into one global government. So that's what we wound up with in reaction to Richard Nixon. So is Trump preparing the way? Who will be the next Jimmy Carter? There's some crazy stuff coming out of the Democrats right now, and socialism is on the rise, as they pointed out. Socialism, when they polled people in 1976, approval of socialism was likely in the single digits, but now, today, it is 39%. So socialism was so despised that in 1976, no one even thought to poll to see if anybody liked socialism. But then you got other ways that America has changed, not just the government. In 1976, the country was 81 to 82% white. Now that has dropped to 57%. Little Italy has now become Little Mogadishu. They've gone from 90% Christian to 65% Christian. Presbyterians outnumbered Wiccans and pagans in 1976, but now it's the other way around. As a matter of fact, you've got the Talarico Presbyterians becoming pagans. So I guess, I don't know if it's perhaps even lower than they report.
Yeah, that's probably counting Talarico as not pagan.
That's right. That's counting him as a Presbyterian. He keeps putting himself out there, but he's absolutely pagan. So how do we best inculcate responsibility and masculine virtue in their son? People had asked that in 1976. And they might debate whether they wanted him to join the Boy Scouts, they pointed out in this article, or whether they thought it'd be better to help on the farm or to learn how to hunt or to work a paper route. Today, the dispute might be over whether or not mom wants the son to become a daughter. That's really where we are today as a society. Would the founders still recognize the Republic, writes Judge Napolitano? And he starts with an interesting quote. And I think think about this. He said, what is better, to be robbed by one tyrant 3,000 miles away or by 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? Well, where are we today? We don't have 3,000 tyrants. We have a bureaucracy of 3 million tyrants. And we really don't have a democracy. We have a bureaucracy. Because the people that we elect in Congress kick all the rule making over to the bureaucracy. They don't write laws anymore. They create agendas and they create bureaucracies and programs, and then they kick it over to the bureaucracy. That's why Nancy Pelosi said, well, we got to pass it to find out what's in it. They don't work with the details anymore. Even though they have 1,000-page bills, they create these massive bureaucracies who are basically a law unto themselves. And when they create these laws, they call them rules, and the courts have held that a rule is not a law, so you don't get any protection in the Bill of Rights for due process. Hey, it's not a law. It was something created by the bureaucracy, not by your elected representatives. This is the legal fiction under which they work. This is why they can steal your car, saying we suspect that the car had some involvement with drugs, but never even charge you, let alone convict you. That's called civil asset forfeiture. Why civil? Well, because you are guilty until proven innocent, and because this is based on a bureaucratic rule. It's not based on any law. There's no law that's behind civil asset forfeiture. It's just bribery. If you remember, Jeff Sessions was really, when he was Attorney General in Trump's first term, A lot of states were doing medical marijuana and some even doing recreational marijuana. He was furious about that. But he was absolutely impotent to do anything about it because there is no law for the drug war. There is no constitutional amendment. They needed the 18th Amendment for alcohol. They used the 21st Amendment to make alcohol legal again. That was never done with any of the drugs that they prohibit. Why is that? Well, because we don't care about the Constitution anymore, and we don't care about the rule of law. So it operates in a situation where the bureaucracy can accuse you, and now you have to prove that you are innocent. We saw that tactic first broadly used with the income tax. The IRS accuses you of having some discrepancy in your taxes. You're now guilty, and they can seize your property without actually taking you to trial. You have to then prove that you are innocent in order to get your property back. That's the same principle of civil asset forfeiture now. So, Judge Napolitano, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just pointing out we are being robbed not by a tyrant 3,000 miles away, but by tyrants 6,000 miles away. It's gotten even worse distance-wise as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's where Israel is. Of course, if you're somebody that's on the West Coast or even, the western part of the United States, the tyrants are still 3,000 miles away, or the one tyrant, depending on who's creating all this. Well, the guy who said that was a guy named Mather Byles, and he was the a nephew of a famous preacher in New England, Cotton Mather, and he was discussing whether or not liberty could survive in a democracy. He was a loyalist, but he did not oppose Washington. He didn't fight in the war, but he just asked some interesting questions. So Judge Napolitano says, many of us who monitor federal excesses are fearful of our out-of-control democracy. That's right, because there is no more representation. Our elected representatives do nothing other than show trials and show hearings that they talk about problems, but they kick everything over to the bureaucracy. They are corrupt. They are bribed. As I said at the top of the program, a caucusocracy is a government by the least qualified, the most unprincipled. But we also have a government of thieves, a kleptocracy. But it's really the bureaucracy that is the government now. And as he points out, the senators originally crafted did not consist of popularly elected senators. They were appointed by state legislatures to represent the sovereign states as states and not the people in them. And so Judge Napolitano talks about the fact that, they set everything up, tried to, they understood the nature of man. That's the Christian principles behind America. That's why we should say that it is a Christian nation, a nation built on a Christian worldview, that man is inherently corrupt and sinful. That's what Madison was saying. He said, because men are not angels, we have to have government, but the government's going to be run by men. So how do we do this? Well, they tried to do it by setting up different groups of government. So they divided power between the central government, the states, and the people, with the central government supposedly being the weakest, having delegated powers given to them only. That's what the 10th Amendment says. But rather, it went the other way, didn't it? And then when you look at the federal government, it also is then again divided into three. They were very concerned, and rightfully so, about the concentration of power and the centralization of power. So they divided power between the three different levels, and then within the one that they feared the most, they divided it in thirds again. And so what we saw in 1913 was a major push to start to destroy that. And it was a push that was done by the Grand Army, the Republican veterans of it, who for the most part were in the high offices of the federal government or the state governments. They were senators, they were appointed, and so these are the veterans of Lincoln's army, and they wanted to make sure that they were going to end any last vestige of state power. States don't have rights. People have rights. Corporations don't have rights either. Corporations are not people, as Mitt Romney said. Sorry, Mitt, they're not people. They are creatures of the government, and they have privileges that have been given by the government. The states are institutions. They are not created by God. People are created by God. That's the fundamental perspective that is really important about the Declaration of Independence. That is the fact that we have a God that has created each and every one of us. We don't get equality of results because we have different abilities, different intelligence levels, and that type of thing. But before the government, before the law, we should all be equal. It is an abomination to see the kinds of things that are happening in the UK openly now. That's what they call the two-tier justice system. People who have been native Britons are now a lower caste, if you will, in that country, lowered to the people that have been brought in to replace them. So Madison warned that expansion of the federal government would trample the powers of the states and also the enumerated natural rights of the people that he would try to protect in the Ninth Amendment. And I say try to protect because it's just a piece of paper, as George W. Bush is alleged to have said. And if we don't force the government to respect it, why would they? So he goes on to say, had Madison been alive during the presidency of the anti-Madisonian Woodrow Wilson, who gave us World War I, the Federal Reserve, the administrative state government by experts, the popular election of senators, the judicially sanctioned suppression of political speech, and the federal income tax, he would have recoiled at a president who was destroying the three-sided table. And, it was interesting. Karen was listening to one of my older programs over the weekend, and I heard part of it. It was a guy that I interviewed that had done a book about FDR. And the part that I heard really struck home because he said, when they went through and they investigated, they found all of these documents, and they've been collecting documents on political opponents, but they had not gone through them. He said they had 1 million documents on people. And they got an army of bureaucrats to go through them and find out who their political enemies were. And I thought about that, and I thought, the nature of humans and the nature of politics doesn't change, does it? What do we have now that's right on the horizon? This is why I say we should be very concerned about the data centers. Because when you look at these surveillance centers that are being put up everywhere, it's not just about the electricity. It's not just about the noise and the pollution and the use of the water and all the rest of this stuff. Because, as a matter of fact, she was looking on Facebook and people were saying, is there a data center going up anywhere around us? And it's like, that's not the right question. It doesn't matter if it's in a different state or the other side of the state. It's going to be used to audit you continuously. It took them an army of bureaucrats to go through those 1 million documents. AI can do it in a heartbeat, just like that. And we already saw that with Doge. It was pretty amazing how you go through and find needles in haystacks. That is something that AI is phenomenal at. And we've already seen how in the Trump administration, you had Bill Pulte, who was put in the housing administration because his family had a large house building corporation in Texas and other places, Pulte Homes. And so Trump put him in the housing, and he used artificial intelligence to go back and audit Trump's enemies. This is like FDR stuff, except that he was able to do it with precise detail. That's where he found the discrepancies with Lisa Cook and with Letitia James in terms of mortgages that they took out and claimed that they were going to be using them for their own personal use, but then used them for never lived in them, and they rented them out. And so it's something of a process crime, and they're able to go back and audit that. And I said when that happened, I said it when Doge happened, I said that's what they're going to use AI for. Harvey Silverglate said in his book, 3 Felonies a Day, he said the laws have become so numerous and so complex that each and every one of us commits 3 felonies a day and we don't even realize it. Well, the AI will be able to tell you which felonies you've created. Isn't that wonderful? So now we'll know when they come knocking at the door. So Madison crafted a democratic elements into anti-democratic elements in the Constitution as well, and he did it deliberately. Like state sovereignty, he created laboratories of liberty, since some states protect more personal liberties than the Bill of Rights does. And Reagan reminded the American public in his first inaugural address that the states formed the federal government, not the other way around. Judge Napolitano said, had I been a scrivener of that speech, I would have encouraged him to add, and the powers that the states gave to the feds, they can take back. And they can. And I argued that for the longest time before the Supreme Court changed its opinion on Roe v. Wade. And of course, you weren't supposed to be able to change your opinion on that, right? That was, we were told for 50 years, it's the law of the land. It's like, well, first of all, the Supreme Court issues opinions. They don't make laws. Secondly, it was something that they didn't have the authority under the Constitution to do. So the appropriate response from the governor of Texas should have been, you've made your decision, but we're going to protect human life. But they didn't do that. He said, Mather Byles feared a government of 3,000, but today the feds employ close to 3 million. Jefferson warned that when the federal treasury becomes a federal trough, and the people recognize it as such, they will only send to Washington politicians who are faithless to the Constitution, but who promise to bring home the most cash. As a matter of fact, people have even used that as a criticism of politicians, saying you didn't bring home enough projects to our district. We need to get somebody else. And so they identify and they attack their political enemies, and with the money, they have ways to bribe and blackmail the states because they get so addicted to that money. They can get around the 10th Amendment. That's how they do all the time. And so he finishes up by saying, in a democracy, a faithless majority will take whatever it wants from the minority, including liberty and property. You know, that was the other thing about the Declaration of Independence. It says we've been endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them are life, liberty, and blah, 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 pursuit of happiness. Originally, it was property there. But, so what do we take away from that? The government's role is to protect life and liberty. And so we look at things like we were fighting with 6-7 years ago. Actually, it was 2018, which was, we got 8 years ago. And reason and would always take the libertarian approach. Well, the corporations can do whatever they want. And I said, no, they can't. If you say that they can take your free speech, I mean, we already had the Supreme Court got it right in 1946, Marsh versus Alabama. It was a situation where somebody was handing out religious tracts in a company-owned town. And the Supreme Court said, even if the town square is privately owned, the private corporation cannot take your free speech. Why is that? Well, because those aren't privileges granted by government. Those are rights that we have as a human being. They come from God. And we're endowed by those by God. It's government's role to protect that. And so the government, the Supreme Court, did protect that in 1946. But when we get to 2018, you've got Reason, Cato Institute, and you've got John Stossel saying, well, yeah, they censored me again. I got banned over here. I really hate that, but they're corporations. They can do whatever they want. No, they can't. We're talking about life and liberty. What would you say if you had the police force was standing there as somebody was shooting and killing people in a mass shooting event? And they say, well, it's not my job. I don't have to protect life. I'm not the one doing the shooting. Don't blame me. It's somebody else. I'm just a police officer. I'm not shooting anybody. It's this other guy over here shooting people. That's basically what they said with censorship. Don't blame me. I'm not censoring people, except it was them. It was them. They were behind all of it. We said it at the time. They said, don't blame me. I'm not censoring people. They're censoring people, and they can do whatever they want. No, the government has the reason we have governments, says the Declaration of Independence 250 years ago, the reason we have that is to protect those God-given liberties. And so that's what I think we should remember about this 250th anniversary.
And it's also with things like antitrust laws. They have those because when a corporation gets large enough, it can start to take on government-like powers if it's not controlled.
That's right, yeah. Big government, big corporations are as bad as big government. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
In July of 1896, exactly 130 years ago, I warned this great nation of the government's plan to crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Of course, that was before they started to bleed us dry with the death of 1,000 fiat paper cuts. But after you bought every single commemorative David Knight Show coin in gold color, the podcast's gold reserves are depleted. They issued 100 numbered gold-colored coins and declared the mint closed. The people cried out, "Free silver!" Well, the likes of J.P. Morgan can't stop this all-new commemorative coin. Now in silver color, while supplies last, this commemorative coin does not contain precious metal, but does keep the show on the air. Equal to the gold color, this limited run is numbered 1 to 100. Get yours today at thedavidknightshow.com. Hurry, because supplies are disappearing quicker than the purchasing power of the dollar.
All right, welcome back. And Stealth Patriot, thank you very much for the tip on Rumble. He said, we had all this big jingle patriotism coming out of Washington, D.C. I think it's a jingoism, right? And they don't give a flying mouse fart to Fledermaus, right, the bat, about liberty. Just their enrichment at our expense. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Guard Goldsmith, Liberty Conspiracy. Good to see you, Guard. He said Boston had a neat fireworks and drone display. Very nice. Well, yeah, it is kind of interesting. Those drone displays are really fascinating. And I started to say they're safer than the drones. Well, we've had situations of the drones falling out of the sky onto the audience as well. We've had not just the fire at Brooklyn Bridge, but in the past there have been fireworks malfunctions that have, I remember there was one in North Carolina, I think, or at least it's when we were living in North Carolina. It was like firing a cannon into the bleachers, and some people died, I think, from that. And so all this stuff can go awry, kind of like government. It can go awry as well. We used to tell people when we lived in North Carolina, everybody knows about kudzu, right? And that was an analogy that we used. We said, you bring government in to solve a problem, and it's just like kudzu. Kudzu was brought in to solve a problem of drought and things like that. But he said, before you know it, it starts growing so rapidly that you can't stop it. And so whether you're talking about hyacinths in Florida choking up the waterways, or whether you're talking about kudzu taking over the mountainside, that's exactly what government is. And usually it's foreign ideas that come in that do that as well, just like these were foreign fauna that came in, the kudzu and the hyacinths. Moonhawk said, this isn't the free market envisioned by our founders, no. With corporations, monopolies, and government intervention, it's everything that they warned us about. Matter of fact, and then a few things they didn't warn us about. They didn't warn us about the pedophiles. I guess they figured we could figure that out on our own, but we didn't, unfortunately. Crypto brought the Trump family a huge windfall, even as many investors lost big time. And Trump and his family have had vast financial rewards. We talk about how big that is. But just remember, it's not only the crypto stuff. I mean, we just played a little clip when we were talking about this commemorative coin that we have. We played a little clip about the dispute between William Jennings Bryant and others over silver or gold, the bimetallic thing or whatever. Well, it's a lot worse than that now. They were fighting over whether it be silver or gold. We're fighting over whether or not we'll have anything physical or not, or whether it's all going to be just this head fake of tokenization. Yeah, this is like the mortgage securitization on steroids, folks, what they're setting up for us now. But it's not just the fraud of crypto. When you look at some of the other things that the Trump family had here, here's the Taser Corporation. New reporting from CNBC reveals that Trump bought millions in Axon stock, that's the manufacturers of tasers, just 2 weeks before ICE sought a $220 million deal to buy tasers from Axon. It raises serious questions about insider trading as Trump continues to profit off of the presidency. And it's not just that. It's the side bets on these different, what's the name of that one that...
Polymarket?
Yeah, Polymarket, thank you. Polymarket, there's another one that starts with a K. It's just gotten to a rampant level. Trump amassed enormous wealth in his second term. He's already nearly tripled his net worth after becoming president. That is unpresidential and unprecedented. But I call Trump Precedent Trump, not President Trump, because he set all kinds of precedents that are bad, actually. Speculative currency called Dollar Trump, hoping its value would soar with his return to the White House, but he ripped off millions of people for billions of dollars. Trump was not good for crypto either, by the way. Everybody, remember, after he was elected, everybody started moving to Bitcoin, and you had a dip in the price of gold. And we said at the time, because, Tony Arterburn is a frequent guest and a supporter of the program, Wise Wolf Gold, and he set up David Knight Gold, so you know that he knows that you came through us. But I was talking about it, and I said it's pretty obvious that nothing really has changed in terms of the value of gold. And that was before it shot up way over 4,000. At that point, it was around the 2,000 level. And I was saying it's on sale now because even if Trump were to do a Bitcoin reserve, the real value is in things that have kept their value for millennia, not in these get-rich-quick schemes or these tokenization schemes that are coming out of Wall Street. These people are constantly coming up with some kind of a Ponzi scheme, and that's exactly what this was. This is the insiders getting in early and cashing out as the suckers piled in. So what he did with that, not only did he not set up a Bitcoin reserve, but he made people rightfully more skeptical of crypto, and I think people should be concerned about it. Trump really showed that it was a pump and dump, didn't he? He had Pumpty Dumpty, had a tall tale. Pumpty Dumpty coin had a great fall. And all the Trump men and all the Trump tails couldn't get people their money back again because now it belonged to him. And this is what we have seen over and over again. Does Trump even worry about this kind of stuff? Conflict of interest, like the taser thing I was talking about? Well, used to be that people would be very concerned about that. But this is the hallmark of America as we head into our third, fourth turning. They don't really care. When Trump was asked about that, he said, I found out that nobody cared. He told the New York Times in January, a remarkable indifference to potential conflicts of interest. That's months before his latest financial disclosure revealed that he made about $1.4 billion for his family's cryptocurrency businesses during this first year back in office, even as the Trump administration has relaxed regulations of crypto companies. He said, I got no credit in the first term, so now he and his family have amassed a mammoth windfall, so far at least. Trump appears largely unconcerned that he will face the kind of political fallout that would discourage other leaders from similar money-making endeavors. And it is important because once people see somebody get away with something, that sets a new level, a new standard.
What is your reaction to the scale of what we're seeing in this disclosure, of how much Trump is earning from these crypto ventures? Over $1 billion last year alone, right? This isn't a cumulative number. It's in 1 year. An industry he's actively promoted and supported and done policy and executive orders related to. Is it legal?
I don't believe so. Certainly, I don't think it was contemplated by the founders when they created the Emoluments Clause. I do think that one of the line items, of course, is the commemorative coins. Several $100 million of income related to those coins. How can that be anything other than trading on his image and likeness in violation of the Emoluments Clause? With regard to the crypto, obviously that's, it's a slimy industry. Certainly the way he's going around it, where he creates policies that can only enrich himself and his family, is something that I think the average American should be staggered by. But you mentioned the scale, and I think the scale here is just, It's intentional. There's no question. I memean, we are seeing the greatest onslaught of corruption in the history of mankind in the last 18 months. We have the $1.8 billion that he and Todd Blanche tried to take from the American taxpayers through the phony settlement of a contrived controversy with which he was going to pay off his friends. This is somebody who every day is devoted to the accumulation of wealth and power. This is, you said it's 900, I think it's 937 pages. I could be off by a few, but it's got to be the longest disclosure in the history of the American presidency. And when you talk about, the scale, you've got Hunter Biden, who, if they traced every dollar that he was accused of ever having, he couldn't ante in the game that Trump is playing. Trump is playing with billions. They were playing with millions. And this disclosure, on top of the disclosure that he issued last month, where he listed recent trades up to $750 million in trades, many of which involved government contractors. So the grift is on. It's stunning.
Yeah, Richard Nixon famously said, American people need to know their president's not a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. Trump says, well, nobody cares. They were both right. We do need to know the president is not a crook. And Trump is right that nobody cares. And so let's take a look. Let's compare Trump to a famous crook in crypto. Sam Bankman-Fried, I call him SBF. How much did he rip people off for? Well, he scammed people. He made over $8 billion. Now, Trump netted 1.4, but that was only in 1 year. Give him some time. Who's to say that he won't pick up the pace? But it's not just that he made $1.4 billion. He also scammed people out of nearly $4 billion. Crypto Rover tweeted out on X, said Trump's crypto empire may go down as one of the largest retail wealth destruction events in crypto history. Of course, crypto history hasn't been going on that long. Nearly 1 million wallets that bought the Trump meme coin are now sitting at a combined loss of $3.8 billion. So, Sam Bankman-Fried grifted people out of $8 billion. Trump personally received $636 million payout from the same project, but you had other people who've lost nearly $4 billion. Nearly half of what Sam Bankman-Fried did. And this is just in the first year. This is not some anonymous meme coin that was launched by random developers. This is prompted and promoted directly to millions of people by a sitting U.S. president and his family. Get your dollar Trump now. That was what they're putting out there. And of course, the Trump coin reached up to $75 in terms of its paper value. It now trades at $1.76, down 97%. The entire structure heavily favored insiders from the beginning. A small group of early wallets captured billions, while retail investors entered after the hype already went viral. About 500,000 wallets reportedly made close to $4 billion in profits. Meanwhile, nearly 1 million other wallets absorbed the losses. And the Trump coin is only one part of the story. They had other crypto projects that wiped out over $51.4 billion in value. So the Trump coin was down 97.6%, wiping out $17.5 billion. The dollar WLFI, that's his World Liberty Fund scam, that's down 88%, wiping out $12 billion. SABTC is down 93%, wiping out another $11 billion. Melania coin, that's down 99.4%, wiping out another $10.6 billion. At the same time, the Trump family reportedly made around $2.3 billion from crypto ventures with very little downside risk. Most of the money was made before retail investors even understood what they were buying, and they just became an exit liquidity. It's a Ponzi scheme. It is a pump and dump. It is a Ponzi scheme. Nothing, no more, no less. So
Plus, when you have
altogether,
it
all these
promoted-
Trump meme coins over $51 billion. Yes, Lance?
Plus, when you have it promoted by the government, people think it's something like a bond. You know, it's generally very secure things that get promoted by the government, relatively speaking. It's not.
Well, I
the-
think there were a lot of retail fans, people who buy Trump merchandise all the time.
No, I'm sure there were. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
a lot of the people that got involved with this aren't the type that would typically buy crypto. You know, he pulled in a large audience.
That's right. Well, here's another aspect of it that I think we need to look at. Remember, we said that there were 500,000 wallets that made close to $4 billion in profits. But of course, there were other things that were involved in this, like the guy, I can't remember his name, the guy who bought a banana duct tape to the wall, that piece of art, supposedly. He bought it for millions of dollars, and then he bought Trump for millions of dollars and got a pardon because he's been investigated by the SEC. Well, there's a lot of people who were buying influence. As a matter of fact, that same guy pumped in a lot of money into his World Liberty coin thing, right? World Liberty Financial, which is a Trump family venture, and got it off the ground. Also, a lot of Gulf states, Arab states that were putting money into that. This whole crypto thing, I think one aspect of this, it was a way for people to buy influence with Trump and to launder that, right? One of the things we talk about crypto fascism, or we talk about crypto Marxism, right? Well, he said that's basically somebody who's really a fascist, but they're kind of hiding it, right? Or they're really a Marxist, but they're kind of hiding it. Well, this is crypto corruption. This is crypto bribery in many cases, because somebody can buy into these crypto things pretty much anonymously, or even if they didn't do it anonymously, they can claim that they're making an investment. And it can be a de facto payout to the Trump family. And they can reward that. You know, pumping money into one of these coins, even if it's not something they're going to profit from, they can still profit by helping Trump in all this. So you have people, you got governments, you got entities laundering payoffs to Trump through his junk meme cryptos. That's what I think is really going on with a lot of this. Nearly 1 million investors losing a total of $3.8 billion on the Trump crypto coin. Again, we're talking about a kleptocracy, and we're talking about a caucustocracy. Government of the least qualified and the most unprincipled, and a government of thieves. Here's another example. Trump was gifted a lavishly encrusted ring from Belgium Diamond Group that won tariff relief. This is from CBS. It said dozens of diamonds spell out 2 giant letter T's next to the stars and stripes. That makes me think somebody bought a Trump watch that was licensed by Trump. And of course, he didn't manufacture it. These other people manufactured it. But when they got the watch, it was missing a T. And it just said rump. It's a collector's item. It's actually truth in advertising. Anyway, this one has 2 giant letter T's. Maybe that's where it went. Next to the stars and stripes in 1776 and 2026. Dozens more diamonds frame the numbers 45 and 47 in the shape of a Superman logo. A diamond-winged eagle carries a ruby shield and clutches an olive branch of emeralds. Below a radiant 250, and atop the phrase 250 years USA etched in 18-karat gold. Does this sound tacky or what?
They've got Trump's style down to a T.
That's right. Yeah, down to a T. Yeah.
Down to both of them.
Down to the letter T. 2 of them, as a matter of fact. It's got 321 diamonds, 56 sapphires, 13 emeralds, 6 rubies, and encrusts the watch-sized gold ring. It's as big as a watch. Again, nothing succeeds like excess, right? So Bill White is the ambassador to Belgium, and he was one that was presented to it. This is the Antwerp diamond industry that's there. Isidore Morsel, president of the Antwerp World Diamond Center, gifted the ring on behalf of the centuries-old diamond community in the Belgium port city. Now, it's kind of interesting because Trump had put massive tariffs on diamonds. It's not like we had some domestic diamond industry here that he's trying to protect. He was just applying this to everybody. But now those tariffs have been removed. Isn't that interesting? So these are the diamond industry in Antwerp. Basically, is run by some Jews. Maybe they got a note from Miriam Adelson. This guy can be bought. We all know that she bought us for $250 million. Right? I guess that we could say that Miriam Adelson's gifts to Trump of $250 million. That's how we celebrate the transfer of America to the Zionist-occupied government that we have today. The ring's value pales in comparison to gifts like the $400 million plane that was donated by Qatar that Trump just had converted into a new Air Force One. And so these are the types of things that people do with Trump. And even if he doesn't get it directly into his pocket, it flatters him enough that they get special treatment for it. So what did they get in the Diamond District of Antwerp? It went down to a 0 import tariff. That's right. They sell $2 billion worth of polished diamonds into the U.S. on an annual basis. After the ring was presented on a star-spangled stage in Brussels, Alexis Wilkins, the girlfriend of Kash Patel, sang the U.S. national anthem to more than 8,000 people who were drinking Budweiser and bourbon from Kentucky. Now, when you look at tariffs, I've talked many times about how many bourbon manufacturers have gone out of business because you got people in a lot of different countries, Canada is one of them, who are boycotting U.S. goods like bourbon because they were upset with what Trump did in terms of applying blanket tariffs to people, even to countries that we had a trade surplus with. He applied these blanket tariffs. Again, it's Peter Navarro, the guy who was, as Elon Musk said, he's dumber than a sack of bricks. That's been proven on multiple occasions. It's Peter Navarro who pushed out the ventilators. Of course, maybe that wasn't stupidity. Maybe that was deliberate. Nevertheless, as he starts applying these tariffs to everyone, and then changing them based on what mood he's in this morning, where he had a good night or not last night. This is, they're drinking bourbon from Kentucky, even though Trump's trade wars put a lot of these people who are bourbon, I don't know, what do you call them? I guess they're distillers, not brewers, put a lot of them out of business because of the very tariffs that are there. So this ambassador to Belgium, Bill White, has raised more than $5.5 million for the 250th anniversary event from a lot of corporate sponsors like defense industry titans, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman. See, that's another way, and it's perfectly legal, for them to bribe Trump. If they contribute money to his party or they contribute money to his ballroom or whatever, they get special favors. And we've looked at this, the fact that it's kind of a standing thing, and it's not just Trump. And it works that way with Democrats as well. You give them $1,000, you get $1 million worth of business. If you give them $1 million, you get $1 billion. It's usually about 1,000 to 1 ratio. You can't get a better investment than a crooked politician, right? So other companies like Intel, Google, Meta, the European chocolate companies of Ferrero and others, as well as the Diamond District. Everybody is buying Trump's favor. Meanwhile, who is he about to bestow his favor on? There's still a lot of rumors coming out about a pardon for P. Diddy because Trump is talking about doing 250 pardons to celebrate the 250th anniversary. And when you look at it, there would be an argument to be made for a pardon for P. Diddy from Trump. He's had a pattern of pardoning people who commit the same kind of crimes that he does. If you're openly corrupt and degenerate, you may be in line for a pardon from Trump. Look at all the massive white-collar criminals that he has pardoned, who also gave some donations in a roundabout way. And, who cover up your crimes if you are a donor, if you're somebody who is important enough, he'll cover up your degeneracy as well. The alleged clemency considerations may be part of the larger reported effort by the White House to issue 250 pardons for the 250-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, that's not really what the Declaration of Independence was about. It wasn't about letting out criminals and predators. But again, who knows? With 3 felonies a day being committed and the being logged by your soon-to-be auditors of artificial intelligence, we may all wind up in prison if we are their political enemies. So Trump said about P. Diddy, he said, well, I haven't seen him for years. Same stuff he said about Jeffrey Epstein. They used to party together as well. Isn't that interesting? Some person said you can tell a lot about a person by their friends. P. Diddy, Jeffrey Epstein, Lex Wexner.
It's kind of like the lockdown, how none of that was Trump's fault. It was all just the people around him. This is all just coincidental. He happened to be around a lot of pedophiles. He's not part of it. He just happens to surround himself with these people.
Don't know how I got to this party, but I'm going to stick around here. Trump has issued an historic number of pardons to free political and business allies, celebrities, and a lot of white-collar criminals. Again, we're looking at business, celebrities, white-collar criminals. It's people like him. Sam Bankman-Fried is also seeking a pardon. And again, that would be very fitting because another crypto con man is like, yeah, I can identify with this guy. And yet Trump and the Republicans as well, and rightfully so, they should have complained about Hunter Biden. I said in the 2020 election, they should have brought that out much sooner. They held it and thought they were going to do like a October surprise on it, waited to the last minute. And it was too easy for the Democrat press to bury that and to claim that, this is a complex situation. It's complicated. You don't really understand what's going on. But we all understood what was happening with that. There's no question about it. Here's Trump talking about his opponent's corruption.
The insiders wrote the rules of the game to keep themselves in power and in the money. Hillary Clinton has perfected the politics of personal profit and even theft.
These corrupt politicians and the radical leftists got rich bleeding America dry. The Bidens got rich, and that is substantiated, while America got robbed. Politicians ran for office promising to protect American workers, but then they went to Washington and they lined their pockets with special interest cash. We will dethrone the failed political class, and we will drain the Washington swamp. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself.
For nearly a decade, that has been his case against Washington. Now,
yeah, well, you're going to drain the swamp, or we're going to drain our supporters' crypto wallets. That's basically the way it worked out. He has nearly tripled his net worth since he took office. Everything that he accuses other people of is an open admission. And again, this is happening while he's pardoning white-collar thieves and scam artists, as well as sexual predators. We're going to take a quick break, folks. When we come back, we're going to talk about more about the corruption, but we've also got a lot of news about the cancer treatments. And, of course, this is something that Mel Gibson went on with Joe Rogan some time ago and talked about it, the 3 different antiparasitics. So we have some people now who are theorizing as to why that might be so effective. We're going to be covering that because that is very important. That is an issue of life. But we're going to take a quick break right now, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
your move. And now, The David Knight Show.
Well, welcome back, DGA. Thank you for the tip. He says, David, never forget Trump could not care less about national security when he pardoned Jonathan Pollard. Absolutely disgusting. Yeah, Jonathan Pollard is one of the most disgusting people. Besides the tremendous damage that he did in terms of American military lives that he put at risk, he has now openly boasted on one podcast after the other about how Israel blackmailed the United States in 1973. Nuclear blackmail, as a matter of fact, and saying that they threatened to nuke Egypt if we didn't give them weapons for the 1973 war. And what did we get in return? Well, after we gave weapons to Israel after being blackmailed with nuclear war, we got the 1973 Arab oil embargo. That's what we got for our trouble. And they're doing it again. He's out there saying now he's pushing nuclear war as something that needs to be normalized. Because what's the point of having all these nuclear bombs if we don't use them? Let's start with an EMP, and we can use that over Iran, and we can take out all their infrastructure and power and things like that, and then we can hit them with the real nukes. This guy is insane. And unfortunately, he's not the only one. He is not an aberration. He's not that far outside of the mainstream there. Well, let's get back to the Trump corruption, as a matter of fact. DG8 says, thank you. He says, David, I have a friend who bought 20,000 of Trump coin. Today it's worth $496. Wow. Oddly, he still supports Trump. It's sad. In his world, Trump can do no wrong. Yeah, it's a metaphor, isn't it, for what is happening to the country in general and how people will excuse that. Folks, we've got to get over this partisanship. It's destroying us as a country, and it is destroying some people individually. He continues, he said, David, people are mistaken if they believe that patriotism is trusting politicians. Patriotism is loving your country and trusting politicians when they earn it, which is rare today. That's right. It needs to be earned, not given. Trust and the principles that are involved. Nibiru 2029 says, loyalty to the country always, loyalty to the government only when it deserves it, said Mark Twain. Yeah, that's... Birdhouse Blues said his son Barron made $150 million in crypto. Yeah, he's a genius, isn't he? A virtual Hunter Biden in the makes. He knows as much about crypto as Hunter Biden knew about the oil industry. It ain't what you know, it's who you know, isn't it? That's especially true when you're talking about the hopelessly corrupt government in Washington, D.C. Both parties, as a matter of fact. And there was an interesting take on Reason Magazine, which I want to play for you. I thought it was brilliant satire. They have one guy responding as a Republican, another guy responding as a Democrat.
Happy birthday, America. It's been a good run.
Democrats want you to know we love America. We just don't like it.
Let me start by saying that anything Trump may have done or said this week is absolutely 100% correct and awesome.
So you just blindly follow him all the time?
Did he say that? Because if he said that, then yes. I love my job. Please don't hurt my family.
Democrats love America for what it could be. Europe.
Look, guys, anytime you ask me about something bad, I'm just going to blame foreigners, Democrats, or a lack of protein.
Mortgage rates.
Democrats.
Groceries.
Foreigners.
Gas prices.
Lack of protein. You see, this is just easy.
Of course we're celebrating the 250th anniversary. We just want everybody to feel guilty. So, yay America, but dead Indians.
J.D. Vance said Watergate's not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. Look around, man. We're doing worse things than Watergate every day. I did worse things than Watergate in the green room.
I meant to say Native American. I apologize to the proud Osawapaha people on whose land we are currently standing. We're not going to return it, but boy howdy do we feel bad.
We're all getting pardons. There are no rules. It's like the Purge, but with truck nuts.
America is sick of right-wing populist idiocy. Now's the time for left-wing populist idiocy, yeah?
You know, on the back of the truck?
I just saw a transgender Palestinian flag, which is
USA! USA! USA!
DSA leader says our goal is communism.
Right. He doesn't mean that. He meant socialism.
What's the difference?
Socialism polls better.
The Supreme Court proved that Trump is right, except when they ruled against him, which proves the Supreme Court is illegitimate.
We need to turn away from rugged individualism and embrace the warmth of collectivism, and this time, less murders.
Guys, even the Democrats have Nazi tattoos now. How retarded is that?
Midterms, I'm not even thinking about the midterms. I'm just thinking about how to get through the primaries without getting shot in the back of the head.
So is the Strait of Hormuz open?
Why isn't the green M&M sexy anymore? She used to be f***able.
Green M&M is attractive regardless of sexual orientation, gender, or BMI. What's important deep down is that she kills a healthcare CEO.
Everything's bigger under Trump, including the national debt. We're expecting triple digits at the end of his third term.
Prices go up because of evil, so if we get rid of the billionaires, gas is free.
We put a pair of these on the new Air Force One. You should see it when it goes to Mach 4.
Yeah, that's excellent satire from Reason. I like that. Is Trump always right? Yes, he is. I love my job and please don't hurt my family. And I love the other line there. What's the difference between socialism and communism? Well, socialism polls better. Yeah, that's right. It's just the label, isn't it? Well, we were talking about Trump's corruption. And of course, it is huge what we're seeing here.
My kids, because every time my kids do, if they invest in a stock or if they go and do a bill, anything they do, because the presidency is so powerful, so big, everything, right. If they buy a cupcake company, well, the energy to make the cupcakes is...
See, they're victims.
Sort of like, how's my energy policy? So therefore you have a conflict. Almost anything they do, if they want to buy a truck, if they want to buy, if they buy an energy efficient truck, they have inside information. It's
how ridiculous
tough
that
in
is.
that sense. I tell my kids, stay away from as much as you can stay away from, but they also have a life,
Is that what he told Barron? Is that how Barron made $150 million on crypto pump and dump?
And I think that number is old. I thought I heard a higher number more recently.
Yeah, it probably is. He's probably still scamming people out there. Well, there was a clip that I played a while back, and I think it's time to go back and take a look at this because Trump just keeps enriching himself using his power and office and his influence. This is very visual. And so I'll describe it for the people who are listening on audio, podcast, or radio. This is a guy, and he's got a stack of cups against the wall, like 4 or 5 cups. And he said, this represents the collective wealth that was gained by presidents throughout the 20th century, up to Trump. And then he's got one that's about 15 feet high. It's a giant pyramid. And he goes, now, this is what Trump, just in his first year.
Every cup that you're looking at is $10 million. And this small stack over here to start with, this is a representation of a full century of U.S. presidents' personal wealth growth while they were in office. We're talking Coolidge, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Reagan, Bush, Biden, all of them except one. 4 cups, roughly $40 million in total, and that's what all the modern presidents combined gained while serving over an entire century. Total, not per president. Now shift your eyes to this monstrosity. 1 year, 1 president, same cups, same scale. 1 century versus 1 year. Not opinion, it's visual math, and your eyes are doing it in real time. So take a good look. All of the presidents, including successful business owners, over here, 100 years versus less than a 1-year period of wealth accumulation for 1 president. Donating a salary is just a headline. It doesn't offset the billions quietly being accumulated elsewhere. If you're telling yourself it's because he's a good businessman, then ask one question. If nearly 50 years in business didn't produce anything close to this, but 1 year in public office did, that's not skill, that's corruption. Nothing you can say can explain this. And if you're at the point where you say, I don't care, I'm not changing, then you own it. And this is what it looks like to sell out America and call yourself a patriot. I hope you learned something. I'm always rooting for you.
That's right. It's not what he accumulated in 50 years. It's what he made in just 350 days as president. So he made so much more as president than he made as a businessman, quote unquote. And as a businessman, he had a half dozen failed casinos. Think about that. How bad a businessman do you have to be to have a casino go bankrupt? It's like a license to print money. Well, we got a lot of trust fund, yeah?
And yet you can still make $3 billion in Washington. It is a far more corrupt situation.
It's more corrupt than a casino, that's right. And so then we got a lot of trust fund billionaires like Pritzker, his family, the Hyatt fortune, and a trust fund guy. And this is old money. He is a stereotypical leftist billionaire. He's a Jew who's pushing LGBT radically. As a matter of fact, his cousin is a doppelganger for him, which is absolutely hilarious. His cousin is a tranny. And I've put the picture up in the past. He put the two pictures of them next to each other. And if you remember back the Beverly Hillbillies, where they would dress up Jethro as a girl, his cousin, Jethreen, and it's basically the same thing. The guy looks exactly like Pritzker. Of course, I think Pritzker's lost a lot of weight recently. I think he's on this Ozempic or something like that. But anyway, the bottom line is that this guy is leaning into, there's the pictures there. That top one right there. There is like Jethro and Jethreen. That's Jennifer Pritzker is what the guy's now calling himself. And of course, they get a lot of money in a trust fund and they don't have to work. And so they're just kind of contemplating their navel or parts lower down. I guess that's what happens when you do that. But this guy is now embracing socialism. So you got a lot of Democrats who are saying, whoa, wait a minute. We don't want to be the Communist Party here. Pritzker does. As a matter of fact, it's kind of interesting. There's a long history of Jewish Marxists going back to the Bolsheviks, who Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, they're all Jews. He said they all hated Russians. And I would take that to the bank. That's Solzhenitsyn. He would know, and he would be honest with you. So Pritzker jumped onto the Democrat socialist train this week in an interview with CNN. How about the irony of demagoguery about wealth from the ultra-rich? This is another example of it. And even Ro Khanna, who's out there pushing a billionaire wealth tax, is a trust fund kid. So again, it's always these people who are supercharging socialism through envy. And Trump is preparing the way. I mean, he's like a John the Baptist for socialism. If you want to look at it, he's leveling everything, getting people to want to level everything out there because of the crime and corruption and the concentration of wealth that is happening with the people around him. People like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all these technocrats from Silicon Valley. You saw them all hovering around like a bunch of Silicon Valley vultures at the Trump inauguration. It's like, look at this. They know where they're going to get their money, don't they? He and Jeff Bezos used to be enemies, but now they're best buddies. And Bezos gave Melania $25 million for that garbage documentary. And wound up spending like $40 million on a documentary. How could you even spend $40 million on a documentary? It doesn't take anything to make a documentary, really. The political left is either doubling down and embracing radicalism, or they're simply revealing their true nature, writes Zero Hedge. The Democrat Party is riding the socialist wave, and the extremists are in charge. And just understand, what funds all of this is greed and envy. You don't have to be rich in order to be greedy, right? Sometimes it's just as bad or worse for the people who don't have any money. They want it that badly, and it becomes an obsession for them. Socialism and communism are born out of the love of money. The love of money is the root of all evil, and those certainly are evils. Pritzker, confronted with the potential hypocrisy of an ultra-rich politician supporting his party's shift into openly embracing socialism, suggested that he's actually, quote, one of the good billionaires. That's what he said. I'm one of the good billionaires. There's a large contingent of billionaires and ultra-wealthy elites who are backing the Democrat Party, and they're backing the GOP as well, aren't they? They may be out of Silicon Valley or they may be out of Israel, but they're still billionaires who are buying these corrupt politicians in Washington. And so here's the first sign of this is the wealth tax that they want to put in. And so you had Gavin Newsom in California say that they wanted to put a wealth tax in California. Then they realized, wait a minute, all the wealthy people just leave California. So we need to have that as a national wealth tax. And so Ro Khanna, who is a congressman from California, is now saying that the wealth tax must not stop at billionaires. No, of course it won't. This is how this all works. Let's go back and take a look at the income tax. Remember, the income tax was put in 1913 at the time that they created the Federal Reserve. And it's easy to remember. Most people said, well, it was just a 1% tax on the wealthiest 1% of the country. And that's largely right. Here's how this breaks down. In 1913, the average wage was $800 a year. That's what the Federal Reserve has done to the purchasing power of our money. Think about that. The average annual wage was $800 a year. That's why you could have somebody say, like Benjamin Franklin, penny saved is a penny earned. Now we have such contempt for pennies that Trump has stopped minting them. So the average income per year was $800. They had an exemption on the income tax. You didn't pay any income tax until you made over $3,000 as an individual, or over $4,000 as a married couple. So again, they had a marriage penalty right there from the very beginning. If you were taxed individually, you could make collectively $6,000 a year. But again, with the average wage of $800 a year and the first $3,000 exempt for a single person, only about 4% of the population had an income that was over those exemptions. And only about 1 to 3% of the people paid any income taxes at all. Because from the very beginning, they had the loopholes that were in there for the very wealthy. And it was never about soaking the rich. It was never about wealth distribution. That's the way they sold it. The income tax became a wage tax during World War II. And we know what has happened since then. It's been a massive tax on the middle class, not on the wealthy. The same thing will happen with this. You start out with a 1% tax rate on the wealthiest 1%. Now look at where we are. As a matter of fact, the corporate tax rate in 1913 was 1% as well. Khanna writes, the tax should not stop at billionaires. It's got to reach centimillionaires. People make hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Or at least $100 million. He said every fortune of $50 million and up should be hit with a 2% federal levy on wealth above that line. Think about that. They're going to start out a wealth tax, if they get their way, will start out at twice what the income tax began with. And look at where it is now. I've said many times, if you go back to the 1950s where you could have one parent working and divorce was not rampant like it is today, it's kind of interesting. Over the weekend, of course, Taylor Swift and the football player Travis Kelce got married in Madison Square Garden. There's this parade of celebrities, and everybody is, writing about that. As Gerald Slinty said, forget about everything else that's happening in the world. What's going on with Taylor Swift? And I thought, well, it's as I was looking at all of that and the headlines with that, I came across an article about a couple who are both 99 years old, and they just celebrated their 80th wedding anniversary. And I thought, why isn't anybody talking about them? What is it that they know that got their wedding, their marriage to last for 80 years? As you look at this Taylor Swift wedding, I think she had her prenuptial agreement was something like 40 pages. I would call that a pre-divorce agreement. It looks like you're planning to fail. Not that you're saying till death do us part through rich or poor. No, that's not a commitment that they're making with that. But why don't people take a look at some of the people who have had a happy life? And that couple's not wealthy. But they've got, I forget how many kids and grandkids and great-great-grandkids and all the rest of this. And they're a Christian couple. And they said, well, the basis is not to have any secrets. And of course, they didn't do that in a prenup. They said, we understand that nobody's perfect, but because we're Christians and we understand that we're forgiven in Christ, we forgive each other. That's the picture of marriage. That got them to last for 80 years because they're now 99 years old. Of course, you also have to both be able to survive. Most of us aren't going to live to 99, so we're not going to hit that. But didn't ask them about what they eat or what their lifestyle is like. Nevertheless, when we look at this, no wealth accumulation for the middle class, I should say, because bottom line is they're going to tell you you will own nothing, and you will be happy, presumably.
Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to hear it in your pod. You'll own nothing and be happy. Ain't got no cash, ain't got no car, but 24 booster shots in your arm. Own nothing. Be happy. You can't even buy shit in the store because of your low social credit score. Oh, nothing. Be happy. You'll own nothing and be happy. Be happy and eat the bugs.
Yeah, be happy and eat the bugs, says I'm Marty. Thank you for the tip, Marty. I appreciate that. Trump 45 said, we will never be a socialist country. Trump 47 is cranking it up a notch. Because why? Because socialists have gained numbers in the electorate. As he was saying, I could be the greatest communist ever. Well, does he not realize just how socialist and communist many of his policies are? Even when you look at the so-called reforms that are typically done, and it's not just Trump, this is typical of when Republicans get into office, they won't remove the programs or the institutions or the bureaucracies that are put in. They will keep them in there. If Nixon puts in the EPA and OSHA and other things like that, even if it's unconstitutional, they'll keep them. They might change it a little bit, but they just rearrange the deck chairs of the Titanic in Washington. They never do any real reform. Birdhouse Blue says Barron Trump's net worth sits at $150 million baseline, but he holds $2.3 billion in locked World Liberty Fund tokens. That's WLFI. If those liquidate, his crypto footprint jumps past $500 million on paper. Well, there you go. So what does this look like for us? Well, Ro Khanna even wants to try to have this wealth tax penetrate irrevocable trusts. And Microsoft executive Steven Sinofsky said, just like that, it's no longer a billionaire tax. Now we're going to go down to 100 million. No, now it's now down to 50 million. And guess what? It's going to go down to the middle class.
And the other tell with this is that they don't put this on, the top 1%. They put it on a number, knowing that they're going to cause inflation, and they can lower that number much more easily than they can say, okay, let's lower it to the bottom 2%.
That's right. Yeah, Pirate Wire's Mike Solana characterized the scheme as an annual asset seizure in which the government tallies everything that you own and demands a cut on top of your existing tax bill. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah, that's a property tax, isn't it? So basically, just like the property tax is an annual rent that you pay and you never own any property, they want to make sure that you don't have any wealth either. So Khanna's billionaire wealth tax, he said, is not a tax, but it's an asset seizure every single year, targeting anyone worth $50 million or more. But this will end with your 401k. That's what they're coming after. They want to make sure nobody owns anything. And there's a lot of wealth out there they can seize from people in their 401k programs, and they're going to go for it. The measure headed to California voters in November is a one-time 5% tax on the state's roughly 250 billionaires. But Gavin Newsom opposed it. He said, no, we need a national billionaires tax. We don't want to run everybody out of California. And so the idea for this bill is to make it national, and if anybody wants to run out of the country, they will confiscate 40% of your wealth as you're leaving. So it only took 6 days for Ro Khanna to plant the flag at $50 million. Buried in the bill is a provision doubling the top rate to 6% automatically in any year that a qualifying trigger legislation is on the books. So already they're looking at ramping it up very, very rapidly in terms of a percentage. One person, as a matter of fact, pointed out that this is very much like the property tax. Guess who that was? The guy who's proposing it, Ro Khanna. As he was being criticized for this, he says, well, what do you think about property taxes? Well, I think they ought to end. I've interviewed a lot of people with various ways to end the property tax or to make it a one-time payment. As a matter of fact, make it a sales tax on the sale of your home. That was the idea of Donald Rainwater in Indiana. I interviewed him multiple times. He was running as a libertarian for governor there, and that was his proposal. He said, all right, let's make it like a 7% sales tax, and you can either pay 1% a year for 7 years and you're done, or you can fold it into your mortgage and pay it off over 30 years. We just charge it at the beginning, because there we know what this is worth. Rather than having the government come in and constantly going up on either the rates one year or another year, they'll go up on the evaluation, the assessment. But Zero Hedge immediately comes back against Ro Khanna about property taxes, and they support property taxes, amazingly enough. Yeah, they make a pragmatic argument for property taxes, eternal property taxes. This is what they say. They said, except for the fact that property taxes are local. Well, that means that they're great, right? They're local, they're visible, they're appealable, and they pay for the pothole crew. I got to say, I want my money back then, because I'm not seeing the potholes fixed on my road. It pays for the 2 a.m. patrol car. Yeah, right. And the school down the street. And that's what I've said. When I was in Texas, they were building one school after the other because of the massive influx of children coming in to be educated at taxpayers' expense. I said, you're not going to have the American dream of home ownership if you're going to educate all the dreamers from any country in the world that want to come here and be educated at our expense at a constant dunning of the supposed value of our homes. So again, I don't think even on a pragmatic basis I could support a property tax, because I don't support schools. I think education is something that should have nothing to do with the government. The government should be no more involved in defining education and should not be involved in educating children any more than the government should be running churches, and that we should be compelled to go to churches, that we should be compelled to pay for the churches. As a matter of fact, that was the situation at the time of the founders, and Jefferson didn't quite get that right. He said that he wanted public funding of education. He didn't realize, I guess, what it was going to turn into. But you should not have, if you're going to, and rightfully so, at his time, people were required to attend a church, or they were required to at least pay that church, even if they weren't required to attend. And that's kind of where we are right now with education. If you don't attend the state school, you still have to pay to support it. I disagree with that quite a bit. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. As a matter of fact, we were just talking about this bill, the wealth tax, add the wealth tax to the income tax, you will own nothing, right? Well, it actually has an audit provision in it as well. They would have the IRS audit at least 30% of everyone who is subject to the tax every single year. Well, how would they do that? Do they have the personnel to do that? No. They'll use artificial intelligence to do those audits, as I was saying before. Look at what not Brad, but it's the guy who was Pulte, I forget what his first name is. Look what he did for Trump. And Trump liked that so much, he put him in as DNI. Well,
and of course, it would be extremely easy for them using these AI models to exclude people and say, oh, it was just a hallucination. And when it does hallucinate and include you with the billionaires, good luck getting any kind of due process or anything like that with...
No, it was you were found out by AI. We can't appeal AI. AI doesn't make any mistakes, right? Well, Free Beacon report detailed how Ro Khanna's own family fortune is set up. He's a trust fund kid. And it's not even his father that he got the money from. He got it from his father-in-law, who is a centimillionaire. His money is sheltered through the very sort of irrevocable trust that Ro Khanna now wants to tax. I'm sure there'll be a loophole in there somehow for him. Khanna's minor children hold trust stakes in 3 private golf clubs, multiple hedge funds. The family occupies a $6 million marble-clad Washington home with a private elevator, and the congressman's financial disclosures run to 333 pages of conveniently non-searchable tables. Yeah, that's the way they put this stuff out. And again, he's not really any different in principle than Pritzker is. And isn't it interesting? These guys, these are the good millionaires and billionaires, right? They're the ones who are going to steal for you. They're going to level the playing field for you. No, they're going to actually accelerate the concentration of wealth. Well, in the UK, the issue is the next step. They're right at the next step, which is debanking. That's the other aspect of this. And of course, I had this all broke in the UK about 3 years ago. And that was when you had some very prestigious London banks decide to close Nigel Farage's bank account. And as this article on Zero Hedge says, Farage did what Farage does best. He whipped up a massive media frenzy. And next to no time, the 2 senior banking scalps had been claimed. And they changed the laws. But it is still going on because they left loopholes for bank closures there as well. And I got to say, and I said it when it happened, you know, this happened to this program 6 years ago. Happened in May of 2021. Almost all of our money was coming through PayPal donations because the program is supported by voluntary contributions almost entirely. And if you want to know how you can support the program, you can go to davidknight.news and you can find where you can watch the show, where you can get it in a live format, or where you can download it, or where you can get an audio podcast. But there's also places there where you can support us now, because we've had to branch out from PayPal. That was the only place where we were taking payments at the time, and they cut us off. And so that was back in May of 2021. And so here we are, you know, a couple of years later, they did it to Nigel Farage, and they said, all right, we're going to stop that. So they came up with a law, but what they did was a grandfathered in confiscation. And that is what has hooked a left-wing paper there called Canary. Interestingly enough, I guess they were the canary in the coal mine for this. So the laws that they wrote said that if you open an account after they did the law, then they can't just arbitrarily close your account and freeze all your money. But if you already had an account, which was the case with this particular left-wing publication, Canary, if you already had an account there, they could do whatever they wanted, which is what they're doing right now. Not only has debanking continued, but debanked customers now face the prospect of being blocked from setting up new accounts at other banks. The Telegraph reported banks are planning to block debanked customers from setting up accounts with other lenders, potentially leading to innocent people being effectively locked out of the financial system. As a matter of fact, when PayPal and Venmo pull the plug on us, that affected us in terms of being able to get revenue from some of the places that they would only pay in PayPal. So places where we could put the show and they might put ads on it. But we need to understand this is really the danger of what some Republicans like Marsha Blackburn, who's likely to be the next governor here in Tennessee, what she's doing in terms of pushing digital ID, artificial intelligence, and digital currency. This is all going to be used in a massive way to debank people. They made a big issue of the fact that, we're not going to have CBDC in the U.S. They're going to do that. As a matter of fact, they have already made central bank digital currency de facto established in the EU. But there was a lot of pushback against it in the United States. So they said, all right, we won't do that. We'll do something else. And I said, they're going to wind up with a crony capitalist digital currency. So we'll go from CBDC to CCDC. But now what they're saying in these latest bills that they put out there is not a ban on CBDC. What it is a moratorium on CBDC until you get to, guess what, 2030. The date that they'd always picked for imposing their technocratic society, right? 2030, that's the year that they're going to have the smart cities and everything else. It's always been the goal, 2030. That's when they are going to kick everything in. And now they're going to kick in CBDC at that point in time as well. Now, you can still stop that at the local level, at the state level, I should say. And you can do that as a couple of states have done. Florida did it. They said that they went through the UCC code, the Universal Commercial Code that's there. And they specifically said that the CBDC and cryptocurrencies are not going to be allowed as a means of settling payments. So you can attack it in your state if you adjust the UCC code. But if we wind up with a governor like Marsha Blackburn, she'll probably get that undone as well. I think they made some moves here in Tennessee. I don't know if they got that through. So it would hardly come as a surprise that the attack was in response to the left-wing canaries' pro-Palestinian sympathies. The UK government has done everything to criminalize pro-Palestine anti-genocide activism, including scrapping the ancient right to trial by jury. Its new national security law, the outgoing Keir Starmer government, is now going to bulldoze thought crime legislation into law, turning the UK into, I guess, Ingsot, from Orwell. You can say something is 100% factual, but if it paints what they deem to be a proscribed organization, even one that has never harmed the UK, if it paints that organization they don't like in a good light, you can get 14 years in prison. So the truth is no defense in the UK. As a matter of fact, when we look at this, why is it that the hallmark of a tyrant is always an attack on free speech? That's where they always start. And by the way, where do we see these attacks and these calls for debanking people and even putting people in prison? It came from the Zionist lobby. In the U.S., recent victims of debanking include Scott Ritter, the former UN Special Commission weapons inspector, a prominent critic of U.S. and Western imperialism and of Zionism and of the wars. In January, his bank account that he had for 26 years at Citizens Bank was closed, all of his accounts, including his wife and his wife's joint accounts with their daughters. They would not offer any explanation. And when PayPal and Venmo purged our account back in May of 2021, I got on the phone with a guy there. He's very helpful, friendly. And I was on the phone with him for 2 hours. And he went through everything he could find. He said, I can't find any communication regarding your account except one message that said, cancel this account immediately. There was no warning. There was no explanation. They never gave one. As a matter of fact, the bank that canceled Scott Ritter sent him a letter, said not only was it under no obligation to divulge the reasons for closing his accounts, but that they actively prevent any disclosure of any information concerning the decision to close the account. So there you go. So again, just like my experience with PayPal, no, not only am I not going to give you that, but we're not even going to tell you what we anything that had to do with our decision. That's just for us to know and you to never find out. In 2022, a year after they banned me, PayPal banned the accounts of UK-based Free Speech Union and its founder, Toby Young, and his online publication, The Daily Skeptic, for purportedly breaching its policies against hate speech. So again, they gave him a reason. They wouldn't give me a reason the year prior to that. If there is one fate worse than being debanked, it is suffering through the ordeal of civil death, is what they're calling it in this piece here on Zero Hedge. And I played this last week. I'll play it for you again. This is Francesca Albanese. And she was the UN Special Rapporteur for the Palestinian occupied territories. The Zionists didn't like what she did and what she had to say, so they boasted about how they got her canceled. Here's the guy boasting about it. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Let's see, where is that? Here it is.
Francesca Albanese, the UN Rapporteur on Palestine. As you know, I don't have to tell this audience, she has said that America is controlled by the Jewish lobby. And every 5 minutes on Twitter, she is echoing the worst blood libels against Israel.
So to prove that it's not controlled by the Jewish lobby, they do this.
We are fighting back. She is banned entry from the United States. She cannot use a bank card. She cannot use a debit card. She cannot receive a payment. It sends a message of deterrence. And after she was sanctioned, we got her husband, who works for the World Bank, who shares in her incitement. He was demoted from his position at the World Bank for incitement to hate.
Yeah, let's talk about hate. Let's talk about murder. Let's talk about theft. Let's talk about what Israel is doing. And don't you dare say that we run the world, because we'll show you how we run the world. We'll ban you in a way that nobody's been banned before. This is the first time a UN expert in 80 years has been sanctioned by the U.S., but it's actually by the Zionist-occupied government. She now faces a U.S. travel ban. She has had her bank accounts frozen. She has no ability to bank anywhere. She said, I can't even make payments with my working credit card, nor can I do transfers. My health insurance has been canceled. I can't make hotel reservations. I'm being treated as if I were Pablo Escobar, a drug criminal or something, right? Because that's where they start with all the destruction of the Bill of Rights, was this the phony war on drugs. But her husband as well getting demoted. And this is what they brag about. As a matter of fact, here's a rabbi who is bragging about the control that the Zionists have.
Once we will leave this place, Hashem will bury America. All the assistants of Trump, Jews. All the assistants of Sleepy Joe, Jews. Obama, Jews. Everyone around there, Reform Jews, conservative Jews. Same thing was in Spain. Same thing was in many different countries. Jews will always control you. Everywhere you go in the world. Who is running all the financial? Always the Jews. The Jews are in charge of the world. Science, financial, politics, behind the president. How can I not be happy? This foolish Christianity that they invented, they took some things from Judaism and developed lots of nonsense on top of it. 2 billion Christians, which are idol worshippers. Chinese, Indian, Hindus, Buddhists, 6.5 billion people are idol worshippers that according to the Torah do not have the right to live. The United States made a decision against Israel. Time we do something to the chosen people, immediately you have a natural disaster. September 11, the New Orleans, typhoons, hurricanes, all kinds of things.
Yeah, again, we're all idol worshipers if we're not following his religion, right? And under the Noahide laws, what is the penalty for being an idol worshiper? Well, he said they need to be executed. Now, he can say that, but we can't say that, right? Because if we say that, we're accused of being anti-Semitic. So they can brag about controlling the world. They can actually control the world. They can ban people in all kinds of new and novel ways because of their speech. They have absolutely nothing but contempt for free speech, nothing but contempt for the free press. That tells you where they're coming from when they do that. Other victims of civil death at the hands of EU authorities were a German journalist, a retired Swiss colonel, and former senior strategic analyst for NATO. Now, the military guy was accused of acting as a mouthpiece for pro-Russian propaganda. So because he doesn't agree with their Ukrainian war, because he's a strategic analyst and he says this doesn't make any sense, they banned him. The other person was banned for reporting about what was happening in Gaza, the crimes that are being committed there. And so we know where this is coming from. Now, these sorts of processes, yes.
The common thread here is it's anyone pushing back against these mass murders gets debanked.
That's right, yeah. And the mass murders could be a war, or it could be the lockdown and the injection of the bioweapon war that was unleashed on us by Trump and his cohorts. These sorts of processes could soon be automated across the board. The author of this says, I warn about this in my 2022 book, Scanned, where he wrote, combining central bank digital currencies with digital IDs while phasing out or even banning the use of cash. Start with the pennies and we'll move up from there, right? Would grant governments and central banks the ability not only to track every purchase we make and made in the past, but also to determine what we can and cannot spend our money on. They could also prevent certain undesirable people from banking anything. Anyone with a blocking notice attached to their digital identity would thus be unable to do more than the most basic things independently. There's a word for that, a phrase for it, I should say. Mark of the beast, where the beast is the government. They will determine whether you're allowed to buy or sell based on what your politics are or based on what your religion is. You just got a taste of that there. The digital euro has already become a de facto legal reality, but the reality is that when you look at any of these digital currencies, they all have the ability to block transactions based on who you are. That's there with the stablecoin as well. So whether they go with a crony capitalist version of it or a central bank version of it, that's what the digital currency is going to do. And don't fall for a minute for this lie about we got to protect the kids, so we have to have the Kids Online Safety Act. That just got passed through the House. I don't think it's gone through the Senate yet. Take a look at your senators and let them know that you don't want to see this go through. This is not about protecting kids. Come on. As I said, Marsha Blackburn is as bad as Hillary Clinton or any of these other takes a village to raise a child people. And she's pushing this stuff through. It's not going to protect the kids. This is simply a beard to make sure that they get everybody's digital ID, that using the internet cannot be anonymous, and it has to be by permission and by privilege. They want to shut that down on us as well. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about what's going on with cancer and with some cancer cures. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back, folks. Stay with us.
But unlike most revolutions where the people rise against a real economic oppression, in our case here in Boston, we are fighting for purely an abstract principle. Hear, hear. It is, however, not nearly so abstract as the young gentleman supposes. The issue involved here is one of monopoly. Today, the British government will monopolize the sale of tea in our country. Tomorrow, it will be something else.
It's your move. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
All right, welcome back. Here's a good example of what is being done to us. We talk about wars all the time, and of course, it's about massive depopulation. Going back to the late 1960s, early 1970s, prior to the first Earth Day in 1970. One of the big movers and shakers was Paul Ehrlich, one of the most frequent guests on Johnny Carson, very well known to a lot of people. And it was always about depopulation. And he said, yeah, wars are great at doing it, but we can also do it with pandemics. Or I guess you could also do it with vaccines, because back in 2011, this is newspaper, depopulation through forced vaccination, the zero carbon solution. This is Bill Gates. And folks, all of the climate MacGuffin, this thing that they invented to motivate people to accept the solution, is always the same thing. Whether it's global warming or global cooling or climate change or a pandemic, it always has the same solution. Those are all just MacGuffins to get you to accept government control of your life and depopulation. Gates was calling depopulation through compulsory vaccination the most friendly, environmentally friendly solution. There we go. Save the environment, kill the people. And as I've said, when we were in London in 2001, in the Children's Museum, and the boys were kids, they were playing, and they had this loop that was going. It was about the Gaia theory. Gaia, supposedly, it's this pagan goddess that they adopted for their climate nonsense, their climate religion, I should say. And so, talking about Gaia almost as if it's a conscious being. And of course, we've got celebrities like Jennifer Lawrence talking about that. We've offended Mother Nature, that type of thing. The personification and the the anthropomorphism, saying that the earth is a living, sentient thing. And as part of that, compared the human population to a virus. So we've got to somehow get rid of that virus. Well, of course, you got to ask yourself, why was SV40 a cancer-causing sequence? And we'd known about that for a long time. I've been reporting on that for years before they put it into the COVID vaccine. Well, that's a rhetorical question, isn't it? Because we know that cancer is the number one moneymaker for the medical industrial complex. Now 20-year-olds, of course, are getting turbo cancer.
You had said earlier nefarious. You felt like this was more nefarious than Dr. Burkholder. In what sense are you saying that?
The SV40 sequences, they should not be there. They don't need to be there to grow this in bacteria. I don't think it's an accident. They could have chosen another plasmid that did not have the SV40 sequences. If these sequences sit above an oncogene and they're promiscuous, that means they are likely to integrate in places more likely than other genetic inserts. Thank you so much. Then they can cause cancer. Insertional mutagenesis anyway causes cancer. And that's the risk. That's why gene therapies were not brought to market for so many years, because there was a risk of causing cancer from insertional mutagenesis. We never needed these vaccines. We had treatments that worked.
Yeah, but you weren't allowed to use them, right? Remember when the FDA was saying, y'all don't use, that's for horses, y'all. And I went back to get some of the articles that were written at that point in time. This was back in 2021. And it's kind of interesting because there were so many dead links. You got publications and websites that are pulling these articles now off of their websites. A good example of that is Business Insider. They have pulled that. I couldn't even find it on the Internet Archives. They've pulled these types of things, but don't ever forget that the FDA did that. And don't ever forget, this is what they were pushing out there. This is typical of it. This is a smaller paper out of Mississippi, but this is information that was provided to them. They said at the very top of it, this information has been provided by the FDA. So this is the press release that the FDA was putting out for the publications to propagate. And they said, well, please beware. The FDA's job is to carefully evaluate the scientific data on a drug to be sure that it's both safe and effective for a particular use. Yeah, like you did that with any of the vaccines? No. Using any treatment for COVID-19 that's not approved or authorized by the FDA can cause serious harm. This is a word from our sponsors, Big Pharma, says the FDA. There seems to be a growing interest in a drug called ivermectin to treat humans with COVID-19. Ivermectin is often used in the U.S. to treat or to prevent parasites in animals. The FDA has recently received multiple reports of patients who have required medical support and been hospitalized after self-medicating with ivermectin intended for horses. Well, give us the data about that. I don't really believe this. Now, it may be that, the different forms of it, when you get some stuff that is, for animals, it's not always up to the same standards, but there's nothing in the profiles about ivermectin. Now, some of these other antiparasitics, people have warned about it. I've not seen any warnings about ivermectin. It's been around for decades. And as a matter of fact,
there's literally over 100 studies showing that ivermectin has over 12 distinct anti-cancer mechanisms across 12 cancer types. A recent study implanted rats with glioblastoma brain tumors, one of the most lethal cancers in existence. They developed a nano formulation of ivermectin, administered it intranasally in the rats, and it shrunk the glioblastomas by 70% in 10 days. And so it's very promising. And we also see lots of case report evidence now of remissions and even complete remissions with these antiparasitics.
That's right. As a matter of fact, here's a case example of it. This one epidemiologist, Nicholas Hulser, says ivermectin and fenbendazole are showing documented stage 4 cancer remission. Big Pharma can't ignore this anymore. As a matter of fact, in one particular example that they gave, you had a person who was prevented from having any conventional cancer treatment, 75 years old. This is somebody who had breast cancer who came back after they got a vaccine. They had had it 10 years earlier, but it came back, had multiple breast lesions, and Dr. William Makis gave them fenbendazole, ivermectin, and no chemo, no radiation, and it went into remission on a 75-year-old. But I think an even more interesting one, because the irony of this, is a man who had prostate cancer, and he was prevented from getting treatment because of the COVID panic-demic that was happening. And what he did was he started taking ivermectin. By the time his surgery date arrived, doctors could no longer find any cancer. His PSA levels had dropped from 11 to between 3 and 4. He canceled the surgery. Now it's been over 5 years since his diagnosis, and the cancer has not returned. He stopped taking fenbendazole in 2022. He later wrote a book about his journey called Finding Fenbendazole by Roger Rasmussen. It includes science-based information about cancer. Interestingly enough, his brother was also diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2022. After following a fenbendazole ivermectin protocol, his PSA levels returned to normal and doctors could no longer detect any cancer. When you stop and think about this, the number of people who have been killed because the cancer, the federal government has withheld this cancer treatment, or in many cases, the CIA documents have shown that they knew about ivermectin and these other antiparasitics and how effective they were. They covered that up. Again, it is about depopulation. It is how our own government is the biggest threat, not only to our liberty, but also to our life. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. TheDavidKnightShow.com.